folks, thanks for tuning in. So this is a session not directly linked to inventory or DIA or Sin7 or any of those systems, but actually today we're going to discuss something that comes up quite a lot in our projects about converting to Xero, or it could be any other cloud accounting system that your ERP will link into. So today I've got a couple of experts with me. I've got Callum from Blue Hub, and I've got Stuart from Accounts and Legal, also known as a Xero MVP, also award-winning. Anything else that you can get, he's got an award somewhere for it. So also famous on TikTok. So yeah, we're going to short, sharp session, essentially just looking at some of the myths that we get around when people are thinking about moving to their account system, especially the cloud accounting space. And obviously, Stuart knows a lot of the cloud accounting world, but works primarily with a lot of Xero conversions as well. So wanted to get Stuart on today and just help us through some of these myths. So we'll get crack-a-lacking. Okay, so there's Stuart at Accounts and Legal, based in the Northwest and down south as well. And then myself and Callum are based in Shropshire. So I'm Matt Flanagan, MD at Blue Hub, and Callum is with us there, who's one of our ERP specialists, Callum Wagstaff. So that is the lucky bunch you have today. Okay, we're going to get straight into it. So why are we doing this session? A little bit about who we are, 3 myths that need busting, and hints and tips for transitioning to your new cloud accounting system, and then we'll wrap that up. So as I said, it's going to be really short and sharp. So a little bit about why we're doing this session. Between the 3 of us, right, guys, we've probably had this conversation a few times over the last few years about why people think they need to move, when they think they should move, how they think they should move from a non-digital system to a digital system. So from our perspective, Cal, in ERP land, we have quite an inventory in ERP. We have quite a few questions, don't we, around, oh, I want to go live on a certain date because it's my period where my accountant wants us to move. So I think that's one of the reasons that we want to cover this today, isn't it, Cal?
Yeah, so it's a question we get quite a lot, actually, right through from BD in terms of sales and getting people looking at the system to actually getting to the point of go live with clients. And it's quite a detrimental factor to some of our projects, really, just because, you know, people are fixated on this date or this period because it's the first thing their accountant said to them when looking at this migration. And the problem is because they're so fixed on that date, they forget about their requirements and their actual business running, you know, operationally and for accounts and finance. So it's something that comes up a lot for us, and we have to, you know, repeat ourselves with advice and like, okay, it's a bit of a myth. Here are the things you can look at. So yeah, it's one that comes up quite significantly a lot of the time for us.
And for you, Stuart, I think in your history, you've done a lot of migrations across into cloud accounting. So why do you think it's important that we cover this and sort of bust some of these myths?
Yeah, so I think I've done over 2,000 conversions over the last 8 years. So
wow, another award.
The battle should be. If you're listening Xero, there's another one there. So lots of good and lots of bad, and somewhere in between in terms of how things have worked out. And I think for me, this why is just to clarify a lot of misconceptions. Again, around time frame, but around what's involved, what can and can't be changed, what should and shouldn't be changed probably as well, and what the role of your accountant can be versus your internal finance team, and where the give and take is really to avoid those, you know, one button car crash conversions, which unfortunately do come across once in a while.
Yeah, I think when we were talking before, I knew you mentioned about responsibility, and I think that's really interesting, especially as an internal finance team or an internal finance owner, and then you work with someone external who's helping with the transition, especially from an accounting perspective. I think that's a really good point that we do need to pick up on. But okay, let's get into the myths on this. So the myth 1 is I can only move my business accounts to Xero or other cloud accounting systems in the space at year end, quarter end, month end, or a certain period end. Now, Cal mentioned this in the previous slide around people being wedded to that date and then actually forget about the quality of it. I just need to get it in on that date for this given reason. Now, this is obviously very sort of wedded to the accounts, Stuart. So, like, what's your view on this and this sort of being so wedded to a period end?
Yeah, I mean, generally it's not such a problem, and I think people get fixated, on a set date that is year end or quarter end, and assume that, let's say, 30th September is our year end or quarter end. That as at the 1st of October, everything has to stop on the old system, and everything has to be ready to be moved over. And we all know, even the best accounts and finance functions and systems in the world, you don't do year end accounts the day after the year end. There's lots of things to tidy up: payments, invoicing, journals. So while you might run at a certain date for conversion, the reality is it can be 2, 4, 6 weeks after that point in time that there's some work to be done and to tidy up. And there's this. I guess accountants want perfection and want things to always be right. Generally, or most of them are people at attention to detail, and there's this belief that it's got to be perfect and it's got to be spot on to move over and crystal, absolutely clean as. And actually, you can waver on your day and tidy up, once you're rolling on some of that information, so you don't need to be so fixated on this. It does differentiate a little bit sometimes depending on what system you're coming over from and whether you're using like a tool to get transaction data over or individual months. Sometimes a month end when it's tidy can be easier if it's coming from a non-traditional system. But even then, you wouldn't do it all at month end. They'd be run over while you tidied that up, really. So, that's the kind of biggest misconception, and it ends up, there's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure already around a year end, and working towards a conversion date that just adds it even more, which is absolutely not needed.
Yeah. I think as well on that is the just like you say, that pressure around that particular date, it is like super difficult for everyone. And I think what I'd summarize from that is really it's not a default position for every single job that you move in a certain date or a certain time frame or the way you move. It has to be understanding what you need, why you might do it, and then make an informed decision as to what your migration date will be and how you attack that. Whereas I think, like, we definitely see it, Cal, don't we? Where it's just like, we're just going to pick this date because it's our that quarter end, and you're like, wow, like that's really difficult.
Where's that from? And I think the other thing, just if it does slip or it's too pressured, like some people get so wedded to know it must be that day, that is D-Day, and actually it's like, well, it can slide a month. Like, it's not world ending. Like, we can kick it back if the process mapping isn't quite finished or the chart count isn't where it needs to be. You know what? Like, we can wait a month. We can kick it back a month. That's okay. So again, that fixation around the point in time is quite interesting sometimes.
And with that, so you've got like I said, 30th September. That's your quarter end. You want to do that, and it ends up being the end of how many days in October? Is it 30 days in October? Just checking my calendar dates here. I think it might be 31. But yeah, so would you then just manage that, like, without going into all the nitty gritty of it, but you can manage that scenario where the first month of the following quarter has been picked up, and you could manage that as part of a transition?
Yeah, absolutely. It sometimes means there's some more duplication potentially on some of those items from one system to another, but it's absolutely doable. I've done that many a time, and rather than pull the trigger and rush it and half bake it, so to speak, give yourself another month, 2 months even to get the data in, and even if you're still working to the September the date, and there'll be more duplication, and that's workable as well. So yeah, there's a few, without going into nitty-gritty, but there are a few, whether it's push the actual date back or just roll more dual working, like it's doable either way.
Okay, so we can bust that myth then, that you can move at any time really, but it has to be thought about, managed, and have a plan in place to manage that transition. Cool. Okay. Myth 2. We will seamlessly switch from one accounting system to another on one day and never revisit the old system. Like, alludes a bit to that one, but to the last myth that we had. But I definitely know from our perspective, people are expecting this like binary cutoff of it's September 30th now, and now it's the 1st of October. What do you think on this one, Stuart?
Yeah, again, we don't want you to seamlessly switch in many ways. Just from a training perspective, for starters, that a week or two overlap, and we're not saying you do everything in both systems for weeks and weeks, and because we know you're busy enough doing your data as it is. We're not going to add a second one, but at the same time, you get things like Xero with a bank fee coming through. There's going to be some duplication or a cut off. You still need to run your business on your old system while we're preparing the new one. So naturally, you're going to get some dual working.
Yeah.
But for us, that is just a fantastic way to, well, here's what this week or this fortnight said in your old system. Let's make sure it's the same in the new one. And if it's not, it's the perfect training way to go, well, what is different? Why is it different? Why are the numbers not coming out the same? So there's that transition. And yeah, depending on what data comes from the old system, there might be reasons to get some reports out even way down the line for that level of detail as well. So
yeah,
it's not dead and buried from day one of the new system.
I actually made a point on this as well in the pre-catch-up that we tend to see it depend on what type of system people are coming from. So if someone's coming from a system where they've used it for 20 years compared to someone who's been on the system for 5 years, then they're making the switch. The person on the 20-year-old system is more inclined to do the dual processing, but thinking about it now, I think it's actually whatever suits you as a business and individuals. If you're going to be more comfortable on day one processing in both systems, and that's going to make that transition period easier for you and the people that you're working with, then there's no reason not to do it because you can just enter it but in both systems. I think it just comes down to whatever's going to be better for you as a person leading the project or a business owner and your team and how they're actually going to pick it up, because a lot of moving to systems is user buy-in. So if your staff are going to get a better buy-in by doing a dual transition, then it's probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah, there's something to be said, isn't go on, Stuart.
Just stress it, and it's not always full on parallel working. It's like the second week, you're still dipping into the old one for reference point of view for what it looks like in the new one, so that it's not a complete switch off. It's not right. You can't have access to it, and off it goes. It's you're more often repeating the work rather than parallel working sometimes. But it's that it's gold really, and certainly for your accountant, that sometimes isn't in the day-to-day process. That is a fantastic reference point for are the numbers right? Is it working okay? Is to go from the old data as well. So,
yeah, it can breed confidence, right? So, the numbers look right, and I can see that going through. And it's also confidence for the user because, I think when you go into any new system, when you do the smallest thing, whether it's add a new contact or you raise a new invoice, you raise a new sales order, or you raise a new purchase, whatever it might be, it's like, I'm actually using the system now, and I can do that in that system, and I'm getting the same output. And those small things are really they get the buy-in, as you say, Cal, but that confidence just increases as menial as we think some of those tasks are when you've used those systems hundreds of times. But when you haven't, they're really important. So, the parallel processing, like you say, and I think that what you actually want to process rather than completely fully reduplicate. But yeah, I don't think we've seen many clients where they've completely left one system on the final day and then onto the new system. There is that transitional period, but again, it takes future planning and a little bit of thought process about what you're going to need in the future as well after that event. So, yeah, okay. So we've busted that myth. Myth 3: I need all transactional data in my new accounting system from the last X amount of years, and we've had this in accounting systems, ERP systems. Stuart, I'll take this from you. If you've done a fair few of these, and I bet you've seen all types of data and levels of data in these systems. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, and again, it's not a one size fits all answer for sure. But I would say it's very rare that all transactional data is needed from certainly more than a couple of years absolute maximum. But even that can be heavy lifting. And the reality is, when you dive into a lot of old accounts data, there's a lot of guff in there. We take a lot of sages where there are credit notes that have been sat there forever. There's an invoice that's been sat there forever. And one question I always ask is, do you want to bring all that information through? Like, now is a chance to cleanse and get straight. And do you need a contact in there that was last used 20 years ago and is a different name now? And the code's completely different to the customer name and that kind of stuff. So it's a great chance to cleanse the data. Also, if you go transactional, you've got less to move and shake on. If you do want to change chart of accounts and planning and structure, the more old data you bring in granular level, the harder, the more costly that is to move it around. So again, it can be a good opportunity to cleanse, but also restructure the way that you're servicing the data. You can't. It's much harder to do that with a lot of transactional data in there.
Okay, I think like one thing as well we see is like this comparative conversation. Like I want all of the previous history, whether it's you know the transactional accounting, whether it's the sales orders or whatever it might be. I want this comparative, and I know we've had these conversations before, Stuart, about like what does that mean, comparative to what level and to what granularity? Because I know we've spoken about, well, you know, you can take a nominal account balance per month and put that in. You've got no transactional data. You can hold that elsewhere. Like, have you come up against that before, where they realise they don't actually need all the transactional, I just need the comparative, like nominal code level or service code level?
That's the most common solution, is to be, look, you don't need the transactional data, but I appreciate you want to look at comparatives. So I would say 75% of our conversion cases, it's a journal, a P&L journal, month on month for the last 12 months to 2 years even, and that's 24 journals with P&L listed, so that you have got that, what we did last year, this time last month, this last year versus where we are now. But again, even that needs a bit of work, because on all traditional systems, you often see the dreaded year-end adjustments that's all lumped into the final month, that makes the final month look crazy. So even when they're doing that, it's to question, well, actually, how good is that data in the first place? Otherwise, sometimes it's better to take the total figure and divide it by 12 just to get an even spread, if that's the truer representation of those adjustments. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, but certainly the journal approach tends to fit more.
We find that in the RP, don't we, Cal, a little bit around they're after sort of it's comparative, but they don't know how to maybe actually communicate what they need. I just think I need all the data. Is it because you want to see like every single unit that's ever sold, or just want to see like an overview?
I think it's a convenience thing as well, like especially in the examples where people have been on a system for X number of years and they're now moving to a new system and they just expect it to be there because, you know, someone's rang up and we just need to go and find that. It's like they want it there because it's always been convenient for them. Now, again, it really depends on the type of business and how much data you need to look back at. But, you know, plenty of our clients keep it a read-only license in their old system and they keep all the data in there, and if they need it they can go and grab it, or they export it and put it into an Excel file or a Power BI file, or all these different reporting tools that you can use. And it saves keeping a read-only license, it saves bringing it all into your new system, because especially with an inventory system, bringing over historic transactional data is extremely complex, because you're not only bringing in values like we're talking about there with Stuart and putting them against the nominal codes, we're bringing over product codes, stock movements, customer names. So it's quite a complicated process, and a lot of people don't realize that. So it's definitely a business by business case, you know, assess what the needs are and see what decision we need to make. So for example, you know, a business that reports on seasonal forecasting, they're probably going to need it in their system because that's how they purchase and that's how they run. So again, it's business by business case, but there's other options rather than just saying we need it all there because that's what we're used to.
Yeah, agreed. I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know, so you ask for everything based on. I think that's what I need. I think
that's exactly it. Yeah, it's what we're used to, so we're just going to put it in there. We don't realize there's actually other options. It's not until you explain these other options people are like, okay, they're actually going to work. Or as simple as exporting an attachment and putting it against a customer, for example, and then they've got all their sales history for that customer. That works absolutely fine.
Yeah. Okay. We've hopefully busted that myth. Okay, so just some hints that we picked up when we were talking a couple of months ago about this, and we were running through it. We just picked up some hints that anyone who's looking at this sort of migration and thinking about their cloud accounting and specifically around Xero in certain parts, there's a few hints we just picked up on. So we spoke, I'm not going to labour this point, parallel processing, duplication while you're transitioning across systems. Consider it as part of your process. Don't automatically think you're going to switch one off and switch straight onto the other. And I think Stuart's point about that type of onboarding and training that you get from it is really good. Anything more to add to that, gents?
I think it just needs to be planned into the process itself on timeframes and you know, we think the conversion process is a solid 6 weeks post. Even when you start training, that is a good solid 6-week process, not a one-day event, so to speak. So just put enough time in to do it.
Cool. Okay. This was one that we all raised in different guises, but make sure you review your nominal codes and chart of accounts. What we definitely see when we are implementing ERP and we're linking into the accounts system, that we've brought across the old nominal chart of accounts, which might be a much older system that's got all sorts of reporting nominals on there and doesn't take advantage of the new ways of reporting in these types of systems. Nominal code chart of accounts very much linked to accounting. Stuart, are you seeing this in terms of people not reviewing these enough or early enough?
I think originally, like, I think 80% of people that come to us don't even consider changing their chart of accounts. And I see two things. One is you see nominal codes that might say telephone, mobile, fax, even there's a flash on pass, broadband, and it's kind of like, do you need those four things to be individual things, or are they going to live in one? The total spend's £100. Like, so about making it easier to get the data right and in the right place, so we can smooth the workload in the future by shaving it down potentially. And I also see a lot of people do management accounts or reports in Excel outside of that chart of accounts, where they are manipulating and moving those things around. So I'll often say, give me your management and let's work them into the reports and chart of accounts from the word go, so we can hopefully banish that Excel file and we can get it straight from Xero. But that sometimes takes a bit of planning and mapping those chart of accounts and codes to where they need to be in future. So yeah, that's probably more common than it should be, to be honest. But Excel is the crutch that people go to when it comes to any kind of data analysis, I guess. So
with product business as well, we see a lot of where they've got things like it'll either be a product line, then it'll be the month after. So like these are all my January sales all the way through to December, or it'll be certain products, or it'll be brands, and it's just like slightly lazy, really. It might be the old system, but when you're going to the new systems, much better ways of reporting on that. But we normally see it's either a lack of understanding or a lack of time, and then it gets thrown across, and you're like, wow, how is this going to be mapped and managed, like you say, ongoing for the reporting?
I think by looking at your chart of accounts in advance, it gives you a chance to align those against maybe your inventory system requirements. One thing that we see all the time in people who make things is that they chuck us their chart of accounts 2 weeks before they're going live, and they haven't even considered that they're now using bills and materials in their system, which needs work in progress. And they didn't even realize that was a thing they could report on, or the fact that they want to split out raw material stock to finished goods stock, which is quite common in manufacturers, but their old chart of accounts doesn't even track it. It's just one. So by doing it in advance, you can put it against your requirements and go, right, okay, this is going to be really beneficial to me down the line, and I know what I'm doing, rather than just chucking it out as at the last possible time.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. The chart of account should be one of the foundation things that starts on the conversion, not 2 weeks before you're going to go live. That's got to be one of the first talking points. Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, we ask for that constantly, and we're better now than but early days we did used to get it. I'd say 2 weeks was a luxury. Probably got 2 hours before some days in the early days, Cal. But not for asking. But again, it's sort of a bit lazy, because you're like, you know what, I'm just going to export it, just chuck it over, and just get on with it. We'll get it going. But it does need, like you've both said, like that early planning, and it's got so much more alignment to what you want to produce in the long term. So yeah, whoever's watching this and thinking about a move, make sure you are doing that, reviewing your nominal codes, chart of accounts. This is one we all picked up on, and it's probably, I don't want to teach people to suck eggs really, but essentially, don't treat your cloud accounting system process or any other new system like your old one. That process re-engineering is so important, and I know it's really hard for people to make that change of, this is how I do something compared to how I used to do something. But it should be for the right reasons that you're changing anyway. Like, I'll start with you, Stuart. What's your view on this one?
Yeah, so I totally understand, if people have done something for 5, 10, 20 years, like we are literally pulling the rug from underneath you in terms of, some people completely changing the way they do the job, and that's scary and probably creates the most resistance for those that aren't involved at the decision making of conversion. Like if you've got, payable teams, etc., internal accounts teams that are sizable, this is where you get the most problems. So, in fact, even when I worked at my old firm, when I first brought cloud in there, I went wrong from trying to use Xero the way we'd used other desktop software before. So the key bit is, first of all, map your existing processes if you haven't got them mapped. And again, that's not always, a lot's up here and not not on a process map. So map out what you're doing right now, and then you can work with your accountant and knows that cloud workings to, where does this bit change, where does this bit cut out completely, and where is this bit new? And you'll often find you go A, B, C, D, E in steps on desktop, and you can go straight A, D, E in terms of cloud and completely change it. So and that's where we can certainly get most resistant. So process maps before you start, and then remapping even once you're live in them first few weeks. That there's sometimes not the best way to do everything in using Xero, so to speak. There might be 2 or 3 options, but having that process map is a great way to work out what's best for you. So it helps out massively.
I couldn't agree more. Anyone that knows me internally at Blue Hub knows I love a process map. And some of the work that we've done for the past 12 to 18 months is more around like optimization of people's systems. And these are where they've self-implemented or potentially just used a different provider, or perhaps gone directly with a vendor, and they haven't mapped out their processes, or they didn't even consider it. So now they're falling into, really bad habits that they've got from their old system. Like a really good example is their old system wasn't connected to their account, so they did what they want, and adjustments is the big one. They just adjust in stock because they can't fill the sale. Down the line, now we're connected to Xero or another system, it's causing big problems. That's a good example of a bad habit that hasn't been captured because they haven't mapped the processes and they haven't defined it before they're actually making the system move. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
One thing on mapping processes, because you've had a bit of a bromance over mapping processes there, you two. But I think it's also sometimes what one person has in their head of what the process is isn't always reviewed by everybody else in the team, and then you've based it on one person's process map, and then the rest of the team get in and go, "What on earth is this? There's only you works like this. The rest of us work in this way." So I think 1, getting them written, and 2, get them internally reviewed and get an agreed way of what you think the process should be. It is uber important. But that's a bit like you say, Stuart. I think ours, Cal, we'll do an initial what we think the process will be, and then we'll revisit them as we're going through the project, going, actually, we thought it'd work in this way, but actually it's not ABCD, it's ABCED now. We'll just move that around. Now we've got a bit closer to the process. So those process maps do stay alive until you actually, like you say, that sort of 6-8 weeks after, they can still change up to that point. Not drastically, but there can be a little bit of movement on those as you go through them. So good hint. Make sure you're thinking about that that process re-engineering that you should be doing when you're taking on any new system, really, whether it's accounting, inventory, any system, essentially. You should be thinking about that. This was a really good one that Stuart brought up, but I think we all feel this. So post-conversion feelings, it can feel worse before it feels better. When you're making that change to a new system, a new process, a new way of working. Stuart, you brought this one up, and we definitely agree. But what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so ultimately the goal of the move tends to, we find, do 2 things. One, it saves a schedule of time because it automates a hell of a lot that was being done manually. You get improved accuracy, and then your reporting and insights are much more forward-looking than historic. So those are the goals, and I would say I'm very good at selling that dream to people and prospects and clients, and it all sounds wonderful and all sounds amazing. But I do always have a caveat of, the first 6 weeks, you'll probably hate me for the first 6 weeks and go, this guy sold a dream that's not happening, because hopefully from this conversation we've talked about process mapping, new chart of accounts, parallel processing. There is a chunk of work involved. And, it's a bit like riding a bike. When you first start, you're wobbling all over the place and trying to find your feet, so to speak. And it's a bit like that in the first 6 weeks. You don't really know where everything is for sure. You're having to lean on, your Blue Hub or your accounts team a lot for advice in that period. So there's a lot of learning, and even if you pick things up quickly, you're going to ask a lot of questions. And as a result, you're not going to be as quick as you are once you've, honed that skill, if you like, over a few months. So even if you pick up quick, chances are the first month or 2 you'll be running slower than you were on your old system. But it's just, everyone has a eureka moment, I tend to find, somewhere between generally 4 and 8 weeks, where bang, it just suddenly makes sense and things then start to rapidly improve. But it is just bearing with it to that eureka moment.
Yeah. Callum, anything to add to that? Oh, I think you're muted, Cal.
The post-conversion feelings are generally like they're inevitable, like they're always going to happen. You're going to have like this difficulty period, as Stuart's saying there. But I think one way that you can sort of like minimize that and like help with it is at what point you become engaged with the project. You know, if it's a project that you've just been pushed onto it by your accountant and you're just sort of going through it mindlessly, and then you realize that 2 weeks before you go like, okay, I need to learn this, and that post conversion feeling is going to be much worse. Whereas if you're engaged from day one and you've contributed to the scope and you've really engaged in the training and really taken it on board and contributed to the processes, we generally see that period after go live becomes a little bit easier because they've become a project champion or a system champion. So it's not going to get rid of it. It just might help a little bit, and we do see it.
Yeah, I think really good points. Essentially, it's hard. I think as well with the system, when you go into the training, you're learning how to use it on day one when you go through that training. And I think people think that you'll have the sessions before, 4, 5, 6, 10 sessions before, and you'll think you're a master. And actually, all you're going to be a master of is what the first day to week of processing is going to be like, and then you start to get to know the system. And I think that's really hard for people to take on, is like, I still don't know about this. And actually, I've been trained on the system. Well, if the training's one thing, it's like, learning to drive. You get taught how to pass your test, and then you learn to drive when you get out on the road, right? It's like, it's really difficult, that part. So I think people want to know everything. But the truth is, until you start processing and feeling it, and how you learn, how you educate with this stuff, it's so hard to take that as a minute one, day one, that you're going to be the master of this system. That's going to take just a little bit of time. But yeah, great point. I like that, those feelings of I'm going to hate Stuart for 6 weeks, and then the eureka moment hits, and I actually quite like him again, is pretty interesting. I definitely think we've seen elements of that sort of range of, some people are like, what on earth is going on? And then 2 weeks later down the line, they're sort of on board and back talking to us properly, etc. So yeah, really hard to go through that. So we finished the hints. So there's a few myths in there busted. Got some hints there for those of you looking. Any questions that you've got? We've got a Dear Sin7 Core YouTube channel. There's a Dear Sin7 Core Facebook group. More information on the website. Stuart, you're everywhere. If you've not seen Stuart on TikTok, he's got some pretty funny content on there, which is all about accounting. I won't go into it, but if you're on TikTok, go and have a look. Big on LinkedIn, and there's the Accounts and Legal website as well. Gents, I'd just like to say thanks a lot for your time and giving a bit of information for those who are looking at it. So cheers, Stuart, firstly.
Yeah, thank you very much. My pleasure. Spread the cloud vibes.
Exactly. And cheers, Cal. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.
Cheers all. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.